Good morning once again from Mission Control in Houston and the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center. At this hour, an American astronaut and 2 Russian cosmonauts are closing in for a date with the International Space Station and an automated docking to the station's Prichal module on the Earth-facing port of the Russian segment of the complex. That docking is scheduled about 48 minutes from now at 4:04 a.m. Central Time, 5:04 a.m. Eastern Time. Aboard the Soyuz MS-27 at this hour, NASA astronaut Jonny Kim and Roscosmos cosmonauts Sergei Ryzhikov and Alexei Zubritsky are now about 2 hours and 28 minutes into their flight that began with their launch at 12:47 and 15 seconds a.m. Central Time, 1:47 and 15 seconds a.m. Eastern Time from Launch Pad 6 at Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The journey of Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky occurred following a flawless countdown at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, liftoff occurring right on time. The Soyuz 2.1A booster arced out to the northeast from its launch pad in Baikonur. A good roll, pitch, and yaw program sent the vehicle on the correct trajectory for an 8-minute, 46-second ride that resulted in the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft with the 3 crew members on board separating from the 3rd or upper stage of that Soyuz booster. Seconds later, the Soyuz solar arrays and navigational antennas unfurled as planned, and the race was on to catch up to the International Space Station. Over the course of the past 2.5 hours, a series of pre-programmed engine burns have raised the altitude of the Soyuz to match that of the International Space Station, as well as fine-tuning its path to the complex. We are closing in now less than 13 kilometers away from the International Space Station. A series of tests of the Corps' automated rendezvous system aboard the Soyuz so far has proved to be successful. No systems issues have been reported, and all of the Soyuz television systems and communication systems are operating as advertised. About 12 minutes from now here in Mission Control in Houston, Flight Director Anthony Varia will poll his team of flight controllers to get a go, no-go for docking. That docking will occur after the Soyuz has conducted a fly-around of the International Space Station. That's scheduled to begin about 23 minutes from now. This will precisely align the Soyuz forward docking probe with the docking port on the Prichal module, which is attached to the multi-purpose laboratory module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. There will be a brief, very brief period of station keeping where the Soyuz will hold position, allowing the Russian flight control team at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside of Moscow to assess the alignment of that forward docking probe with Prichal before the commands will be initiated for final approach that will result in contact and capture of the Soyuz with the International Space Station. Once the docking occurs, the relative motion of the 2 vehicles will dampen out against one another. That docking probe will retract, bringing the 2 docking interfaces flush against one another for the initiation of the closing of the hooks, both on the Soyuz side of the docking interface as well as on the Prichal module docking interface. A little over 2 hours after docking, after leak checks are initiated to ensure that we have an airtight seal between Soyuz and the station, the hatches will open, and the Expedition 72 crew, led by a Russian cosmonaut Alexei Ovchinin, will open the hatch on the Prichal side of the docking interface. the Soyuz hatch will be open, and Kim, Zubritsky, and Ryzhikov will float on board to join Ovchinin, Ivan Wagner, Kirill Peskov, Don Pettit, Ann McLean, Nicole Ayers, and Takoya Onishi. Those are the 7 current residents of the International Space Station. The station's population will grow to 10 for 11 days and change, resulting in the undocking of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft on Saturday afternoon, April 19th, with Pettit, Wagner, and Ovchinin on board. They will be heading for an undocking and a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan in the early morning hours of April 20th, Kazakhstan time. That will be Saturday evening, U.S. time. That landing will conclude about a 7-month mission for Pettit, Wagner, and Ovchinin as they will come home following their research mission on board the International Outpost. This video is the overlay video in the cockpit of the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft, showing a variety of different parameters available for Ryzhikov, who's the Soyuz commander, seated in the center seat of the descent module of the 3-section Soyuz vehicle. To his left is board engineer number 1, that's Alexei Zubritsky, and on his right, NASA's Jonny Kim, serving as board engineer number 2. For Zubritsky and Kim, this is their first flight into space. It is the 3rd flight into space for Sergei Ryzhikov, who up to this point has logged 358 days of spaceflight experience.
10 meters per second. In 10 minutes, expect manifold 3.
Jonny Kim, serving as flight engineer aboard the Soyuz MS-27, has already had a distinguished career, both in the field of medicine as well as in the military. He is an astronaut with great aspirations as to what he intends to accomplish on board the International Space Station. Let's take a closer look right now at NASA's Jonny Kim.
Lifelong learning is a life goal of mine. So when we start off in this world as really young children, we have this uninhibited belief in ourselves that we can go out and do anything. And I think along the way, when we grow up, we lose a little bit of that. We, as adults, as human beings, as learners, are always more capable than we give ourselves credit for. You're never too late to learn something new or to start a new venture. Start a new adventure. Yeah, I had the honor of serving our country as a SEAL earlier in my life, and later on as a physician, and now as an astronaut. And I've learned unique things from all of them. This lesson I learned early in SEAL training, to pass the crucible of this training, it's called Hell Week. And essentially, you're up for 5.5 days. No sleep, you get like a couple-hour break, but essentially for those 5.5 days, you are enduring very harsh physical conditions. After 24 hours, we got our first meal in the galley. Hot food. You were still cold because you're sopping wet and shivering at the table, but it was in a warm environment. And one of the instructors said, I have the entire schedule for the rest of Hell Week. Who wants to see it? And about a dozen people raised their hands and they went over. And about a dozen people immediately quit because they could not humanly comprehend the amount of pain and suffering that was ahead of them. But those who just chose to focus on their next meal, they just had that to work with, not this. Any kind of goal, any kind of mission, if you just think about where you are in the end goal and all the work in between, you're never gonna make it. It's too overwhelming. But if you break that up into much smaller bite-sized pieces, everyone can achieve greatness. And that's what we do here at NASA. Medicine's the last thing I wanted to do. I feel like the universe just kind of picked that path for me, like you will do this. In order for me to join the Navy as soon as possible, I had to become a medic, or what we call it, a hospital corpsman. So that kind of set the foundation of my introduction to medicine. And then, of course, in the SEAL team, one of my duties was to be the combat medic. And I had the fortune to be able to treat people when they needed help the most. After my experiences in combat and in the military, I just needed to do something else, but I still wanted to serve the public and help others. And to me, medicine was the natural choice. And in NASA, I've been able to kind of put a lot of those lessons that I've learned in my life to practice here. I really feel like I was almost pulled in this direction. I had never seriously considered being an astronaut. It's not because I didn't want to be one, it's just I thought it was unattainable for me, especially as a kid. That started to change as I continued to grow and develop as an adult and have new experiences and realizing, like we talked about earlier, about lifelong learning. It's never too late to learn something new or develop. And so I was very inspired by NASA. It was actually the first Orion mission, right? It was on YouTube. I don't know how it came on my feed, but it was an amazing narration of this mission that I knew nothing about. And that was the first seed for me to be like, wow, NASA's doing something incredible. And they are impacting the community and the world. I would like to be a part of it. And the more I learned about NASA, the more I realized that the same forces that had pulled me into the SEAL teams, into medicine, which is leaving the world better than we found it in our own way, I certainly think NASA does that very, very well. And so I became inspired. I wanted to be a part of the mission, contribute to the mission, and help inspire the world and the next generation to make this world a better place, because right now, it's the only one we got. I'm Jonny Kim, and I'm a NASA astronaut.
NASA's Jonny Kim, who, along with Sergei Ryzhikov and Alexei Zubritsky, now about 37 minutes away from arrival at the International Space Station. This view from an external television camera on the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft, showing the crosshaired data on that overlay. In the lower left-hand corner, you can see the two lower values just at the bottom of that bottom left-hand box. 3.7 kilometers, that is the current distance and closing between Soyuz and the space station. And the bottom line, 8.8 meters per second, that is the rate of closure. At the point at which the Soyuz will arrive at the station for docking, that rate of closure will have slowed to just about 1/10 of a meter per second, allowing contact and capture between the Soyuz forward docking probe and the Prichal module. That's the bulbous node module that is attached to the multipurpose laboratory module on the Russian segment of the International Space Station. We're also coming up on the point at which the Soyuz will execute a series of pre-programmed impulse burns, as they are called, using the main engine and the thrusters on the Soyuz vehicle. These are small mid-course correction burns that will fine-tune the Soyuz's path toward the International Space Station, with the fly-around of the station beginning just under 13 minutes from now. This is an angular approach to the station at a distance of about 400 meters that will precisely position that forward docking probe right down the barrel of the Prichal module docking port, initiating a brief period of station keeping before the commands are given for final approach and docking. And there, through the eyes of the International Space Station's external cameras, at an orbital sunrise showing the Soyuz MS-27.
Yes,
just 2 hours and 42 minutes ago, the Soyuz lifted off from its launch pad at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, now approaching the neighborhood of the International Space Station for docking that is scheduled about 34 minutes from now.
Everything is
Station
nominal.
shifts to the right and down.
However, the screen is black.
A beautiful palette of colors as the International Space Station and the Soyuz fly up the east coast of South America on a trajectory from southwest to northeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator.
Yes, everything is connected.
Depot
I just got the
firing in
recommendation
progress.
that you please
Completed.
disconnect it and then connect it back.
The burn. Combined GSO confirmed. SKD fired 10-3105, copy.
A good view of those thruster firings. Again, those are fine-tuned maneuvers to more precisely hone in on the International Space Station.
11-7124.
The Impulse 4 burn using the Soyuz main engine has just been executed. A quick 17.6 second burst.
Moscow Station, Space to Ground 1. Go ahead on Space to Ground 1. Yes, we got the picture now. Yes, I disconnected the USB and then connected it back. Now I have the image as well. Excellent. Thank you so very much.
Once again, the view of the display inside the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft as the two cosmonauts, Sergei Ryzhikov, the Soyuz commander, and Alexei Zubritsky, along with NASA's Jonny Kim, look at the International Space Station approaching the cross-haired field of view. Impulse 4 burn now complete. Impulse 5 coming up momentarily.
Copy.
On board the station, the 7 crew members comprising the Expedition 72 crew have been up for a few hours now as they prepare to greet Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky. Once the docking has occurred and the hatches have been opened later this morning, Ovchinin will conduct an typical safety briefing to familiarize the 3 new arrivals, although this is Ryzhikov's 3rd flight to the station, with all of the safety procedures and evacuation procedures. That is typical standard procedure to make sure that everybody is aware of where all of the vehicles are located and where all of the emergency flight data file books are located. The crew then will move into the back end of their day, having an opportunity to familiarize themselves in the beginning of a handover that will result in Don Pettit of NASA and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner leaving the station on Saturday, April 19th. Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky will be aboard the station until December.
Image on VECO monitor. If you don't mind, I will play with the CG mode. Yes, here you go.
Less than 8 minutes away from the Soyuz initiating its fly-around of the International Space Station. That will occur at a range of about 400 meters from the complex, a fly-around angle of almost 55 degrees. A short time before we began our broadcast, the Corps' automated rendezvous system on the Soyuz was checked out and is operating perfectly. If all goes as planned, this is basically a hands-off approach for the 3 crew members on board the Soyuz MS-27, as the Corps will act to guide in the Soyuz for its precise link-up with the Prichal module, that docking scheduled less than 30 minutes from now.
1,000 meters, rate 3.4. Depot firing confirmed. Braking.
And a good view of the International Space Station now from the external camera on the Soyuz vehicle. The Soyuz less than 1,000 meters away, closing at a rate of about 2.6 meters per second. Six minutes away from the initiation of the Flyaround. The space station and Soyuz passing off the northeast coast of South America, moving from southwest to northeast.
Depot duration 30 seconds, still in progress. Depot firing duration total 1 minute. 7.8 range.
The Soyuz has just executed Impulse 5, as it is called. This was about a 72-second burn. Coming up is Impulse 6, another 12-second burst of the Soyuz thrusters. Beautiful shot over the South Atlantic at an altitude of 262 statute miles.
(702.37) on VSK. I can see the station, good visual, but not on VKO.
Работает депо, пароль торможения.
Depot firing, braking. Copy.
(1250)
177. 50. LED is not illuminated. Range 600 meters.
The Soyuz MS-27 with Jonny Kim, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Alexei Zubritsky on board, flying in tandem with the International Space Station. Two vehicles flying at 17,000 miles an hour plus. The Soyuz poised to begin its fly-around of the station about 3 minutes from now.
скорость.
500 range, rate 1.5, copy.
Готовность навигации, готовность прогноза.
Again, after docking occurs, there will be a brief period to allow the relative motion of the two vehicles to settle down amongst themselves against the docking interfaces of the two spacecraft, initiating the retraction of the forward docking probe that will set the stage for hooks on the Soyuz and the Prichal sides of the docking interface to close to form a hard mate. Leak checks will be initiated on both sides of the docking interface by the respective crews, setting the stage for hatch opening that is scheduled somewhere in the neighborhood of about 6:20 a.m. Central Time, 7:20 a.m. Eastern Time this morning.
Слышал, самолет в 11:40-15.
11:40:15, start of Flyaround, depot of Flyaround.
The Soyuz in the foreground,
Shifted.
that is the Soyuz MS-26, that is the ride home on April 19th, U.S. time, for Don Pettit, Alexei Ovchinin, and Ivan Wagner. Peering over that Soyuz, a good view of the new MS-27 that is now less than 24 minutes away from arrival at the International Space Station.
I have about 46 degrees left.
Скорость 0,8.
Rate 0.8, range 150.
$320.075.
320 and 075.75.
The Soyuz arrived just a touch earlier than had been planned. The Flyaround currently being executed. Once the Soyuz has precisely aligned itself with the Prichal module, there will be a quick period of station keeping to enable the flight controllers in Korolyov outside of Moscow to assess the precise alignment of the forward docking probe with Prichal. Less than 300 meters separating Soyuz from the station, closing at a rate of about 0.6 of a meter per second.
$280.58.
280 meters, 0.58.
Принято.
Copy.
Soyuz in the station approaching the west coast of Africa. Flyaround almost complete. (250 meters separating the two vehicles.
Работает ДПО.
Depot firing in progress.
Принято.
Copy.
1050, скорость 0,4.
Range rate 0.4.
Soyuz steadily decelerating, basically putting the brakes on here as it completes the fly-around of the station. The Corps' automated rendezvous system is operating as expected.
Работает ДПО, дальность 200.
Depot firing 200 meters.
Пропал захват на первом комплекте.
We lost signal on string 1.
Контролируем дальность.
Monitoring range visually.
Круговой поиск СНЦ, первый комплект.
String 1 is scanning.
1044. Есть захват.
1044, signal locked.
15, скорость 0,3.
218, rate 0.3. Copy.
Контролируйте на НП-1.
Monitor on info 1.
Пока не горит.
What about Prichal format?
Работа ДПО, даже здесь.
Not activated, depot firing in progress.
На пилингу.
210 range.
Напротив стыковочного узла.
Actually, we are right across against the docking port.
1045.
Prichal confirmed. 45 confirmed, copy. Range 200.
And at a range of 200 meters, you're looking right down the barrel of the Prichal module through the crosshairs of the Soyuz external television camera.
In progress.
Flying over southern Morocco, the Soyuz MS-27 is now in a brief period of station keeping.
Favor. You are go to turn on floodlight and ECG mode. Copy. 11:46:19. Activating ECG of VSK. Okay. Sending S-17. Armed. Send. Floodlight is on. Range 194. And the rate is 0.08. We are across from the docking port. Copy. All right. Go for final approach from control panel. Copy. We are going to send in manual command from the motion display.
Flying just to the south of Casablanca, the Soyuz MS-27 is soon to begin its final approach for docking, running ahead of schedule.
11:47. 30. Send Prichal. And I can see approach on the display. Depot firing in progress. Combined GSO.
And final approach now has been initiated. The flight control team in Korolyov happy with the alignment of that forward docking probe with the Prichal module, so Soyuz is now closing in on the final leg of a two-orbit journey from the launch pad in Baikonur.
What about the video? Burn complete. Range 170. Rate 0.082. Copy. Final approach.
At a range of about 47 meters, the Soyuz will execute a braking thruster test and will activate its docking system.
Range 150. Rate unintelligible. .67.
Just over 3 hours ago, that vehicle sat on the launch pad at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, now closing in on the final leg of its rapid journey to reach the International Space Station.
But not on VKO monitor. Copy. .67 is rate.
Soyuz flying over the Mediterranean at this hour.
0.54 range rate.
On final approach for docking, just 90 meters separating Soyuz from the Prichal module.
0.43. 80 and 0.35.
0.3 of a meter per second is the closure rate.
Дальность 70 метров.
70 meters. Point unintelligible. Confirm visual. Combined gas cell. Target is about half cell to the right and down.
Back to this view of the Prichal module's docking port. Almost in the crosshairs of this view from the Soyuz external television camera, less than 60 meters separating Soyuz from its port,
27.
closing at a rate of 0.2 of a meter per second.
Дальность скорость 0,15.
50 range, 0.15 range rate. Copy.
Есть информация о готовности СП.
We have readiness data.
Дмитрий 7.
The upper section of the Soyuz, where the docking probe is located, is the orbital module. The center section, where the 3 crew members are strapped in, is the descent module. And the white section, the rear of the Soyuz, if you will, along with the solar arrays, is the instrumentation and propulsion module.
Range rate.
"36 meters now, the distance between Soyuz and the station. Everything is performing as planned, closing at a rate of just over 1/10 of a meter per second.
Station is half cell to the right. Crosshairs aligned. Copy. Confirm the range. Rate 0.11, range 0.25. Unintelligible. Copy.
Есть база R. Есть база R. Дальность 20 скорость.
Base confirmed. Range 0.023. Target is practically in the center. Docking port is clean. Proceeding, copy. Range 0.015, visually seems a bit closer. Rate 0.12. Half cell above. So that's pretty big discrepancy.
Soyuz now just 17 meters away. The proper closure rate of 1/10 of a meter per second in play.
Unintelligible. Rate 0.12. There is a slight discrepancy. Copy.
This Soyuz will park itself at the Prichal module next door to it, the Soyuz MS-26 at the Rosviet module, where the vehicle is located that will bring home Don Pettit, Alexei Ovchinin, and Ivan Wagner on April 19th U.S. time.
Small delta.
Standing by for contact and capture.
Meter. 1 meter. Rate 0.1.
We have contact. We have capture at 3:57 a.m. Central Time, 4:57 a.m. Eastern Time.
2.
As the International Space Station and Soyuz MS-27 flew 262 miles over western Russia.
Congratulations, Sergei. Congratulations on your arrival to the International Space Station. Thank you, Alexei. Please repeat.
We'll now stand by for the relative motion of the two vehicles to settle down, initiating the retraction of the docking probe.
Display.
A flawless flight from launch pad to docking for Soyuz MS-27.
In work.
Jonny Kim, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Alexei Zubritsky have arrived at their home for the next several months. They will be on board the station until December.
Check-in parameters. Section 1, tanks 109, number 2, 236. 502 for propellant.
Two Soyuz vehicles side by side at the International Space Station.
Now page 57.
MS-27 at the top of your screen, MS-26 at the bottom.
Preparing for R7 command. R7 input.
The flight from launch until docking was as smooth as glass for Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky.
Soyuz light deactivated. No, this is not correct. Now S18. This is the command for the Soyuz light.
The trip for the three crew members took 3 hours and 10 minutes, with the launch occurring at 12:47 a.m. Central Time, 1:47 a.m. Eastern Time. Once again, docking occurring at 3:57 a.m. Central, 4:57 a.m. Eastern, over western Russia.
Copy, start.
понятно. Подождем. Все команды Земли самостоятельно не выдаем. Все команды Земли самостоятельно не выдаем.
Okay, some commands are from the ground.
Какие-нибудь пожелания есть? Что вам приготовить? Покушать? Ребят, есть что-то?
Any preferences for food that you would like to have later?
Да нет, Леша, спасибо.
Not really, but thank you.
Штатно все.
And everything nominal.
Да, все хорошо. Спокойненько так долетели. Да.
We arrived
Да.
without any
Почти пораньше.
perturbations. It was great.
Фразу знакомые помнят.
We remember how it was before. Favore, this is Moscow.
Фаворы на связи.
Go ahead.
Как слышно, Фаворов?
Moscow, how do you read us? Yes, we read you. Favore.
The docking probe has been retracted and hooks are now driving.
Now,
This will form a hard mate between Soyuz and Prichal.
S13.
Once that's accomplished, leak checks will begin on both sides of the docking interface to ensure that we have an airtight seal. Prior to the opening of the hatches, that is scheduled about 2 hours and 15 minutes from now.
13. And do we start ECG? Not yet.
Пока нет. Вас
Copy.
понял.
Not yet.
Готовим С-13.
Preparing S13 command. Sierra 13. Moscow station, space to ground 1.
С-13 подготовлено.
Go ahead on space to ground 1. S13 command armed.
Выдаем. 12:03.
And Sergey, I'm ready to put KVD into the electrical control
Переходный люк
position.
закрыт. Есть электроразъем, светофорный отвод.
Transfer hatch closed.
You're a
electrical
go.
connector.
The hooks are now closed on the Soyuz side of the docking interface. Next up, the closing of the hooks on the Prichal side.
Tune the command.
3:40. Выдал повторно С-13.
S13.
Есть крюки закрыты.
We have indication for hooks closed at 12:03:40.
Телевидение отключаем.
Do we turn off the video? Not yet, Favore.
Вас понял.
Copy.
Ступенчато открываем РПВ-1.
Favore, now open O2 manual isolation valve.
Вас понял.
Step by
Открываем
step.
РПВ-1. У нас постоянное
Sergei
давление.
Ryzhikov, the Soyuz commander, running through post-docking procedures to safe the vehicle.
Подача.
It was a flawless docking at 3:57 a.m. Central Time, 4:57 a.m. Eastern Time.
Открыт. 30. Режим продувка 30 секунд. Правильно поняли?
30-second purge. Correct?
Верно, на 30 секунд ФПРД, режим продукции.
Принято.
Latches retracted. Cabin O2 valve.
Нет. 3, 2, 1. Поехали.
3, 2, 1.
Давление 779 высота.
Pressure in SR 739.
Штанга СМ стянута.
Probe retracted. Moscow station, space ground 1.
3,
Go ahead on space ground 5 seconds.
1. Закрываем.
I'm doing the closeout ops and
transfer hatch to close.
Depths 10, 11, and 12.
Repress.
TV camera, yes. Please go ahead and do the closeout off.
Pressure 790.
Copy.
Поворот, закрывайте РПВ-1.
Ready to close. O2 manual isolation valve. Yes, you have a go. Closing.
This is Mission Control Houston. We now have confirmation of the closing of the Prichal node module hooks. So we have a hard mate now between the Soyuz MS-27 and the International Space Station. This will initiate a couple of hours of leak checks, the pressurization of the vestibule, the small passageway between the Soyuz and Prichal that will lead to the hatch opening and the arrival on board the station for NASA's Jonny Kim and Roscosmos cosmonauts Sergei Ryzhikov and Alexei Zubritsky. So rendezvous and docking went by the book, no issues at all with the Soyuz spacecraft. Docking occurring at 3:57 a.m. Central Time, 4:57 a.m. Eastern Time, as the two spacecraft, the station and Soyuz, flew 262 miles over western Russia. With that, we'll wrap up this broadcast and point you toward our hatch opening broadcast. In about 2 hours from now, we'll be back on the air at 6 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Eastern Time. The procedures to begin the opening of the hatch should occur about 20 minutes later. The three newly arrived crew members, Kim, Ryzhikov, and Zubritsky, will float on board. They'll be greeted with some congratulatory comments from officials at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, as well as the spacecraft communicator here in Mission Control in Houston. We'll bring all of that coverage to you about 2 hours from now. So join us then, but for the meantime, we'll close out this broadcast with the successful docking of Soyuz MS-27 to the International Space Station. This is Mission Control Houston.